marry me just for a year.
The boardroom smelled like cold coffee and expensive wood polish, like decisions that had already been made before anyone sat down. Malik Grant stood at the end of the table with his hands relaxed at his sides, as if calm could be worn like armor. Around him, the directors of Ashford Meridian Group watched in quiet discomfort, their eyes flicking between him and the man seated near the head. Damon Ashford leaned back in his chair, one ankle crossed over his knee, smile sharpened into something that didn't belong in a room that controlled thousands of lives. Vivian Ashford sat beside the chairman's seat, still as glass. Her expression didn't crack, but Malik noticed the only thing that moved, her right hand, closed around a small object beneath the table. A pocket watch. Its chain glinted once when she shifted, just enough to catch the light like a warning. Damon's voice carried easily, practiced and smooth. "Let's not pretend we're shocked," he said, eyes narrowing toward Malik. "He was hired help. He's still hired help. He's replaceable." Malik exhaled through his nose. For a second, he heard his daughter's laughter in his mind. Naya's, bright and stubborn, the sound that kept him upright when grief tried to kneel him. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, and set it on the table with a soft, controlled click. The room went still. Malik looked straight at Damon. "You offered to buy me," he said, voice steady enough to cut through the air like wire. "But you didn't just offer money. You offered my child's future." Damon's smile twitched. "I offered you a way out. You're drowning, Grant." "And you thought I'd drown my conscience with your check?" Malik's eyes didn't blink. "Play it." A few directors leaned forward before they realized they were doing it. Vivian's gaze stayed on Malik, unreadable, but her grip on the pocket watch tightened, knuckles whitening in the shadow under the table. The phone speaker crackled. A recorded voice filled the room, Damon's voice, calm and cruel, speaking as though morality was a luxury only fools could afford. Malik watched Damon's face change, watched the first hairline fracture appear in a man who'd built his entire life on control. And then, like a blade sliding free, Malik added, "And that's not all." He placed a folder on the table. Inside were printed logs, timestamps, device IDs, evidence of a private breach that made the board members stiffen in their seats. Because Damon hadn't only tried to steal a company, he'd tried to steal a person. Vivian's jaw tightened. The pocket watch chain trembled once. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant," he said carefully, "where did you get this?" Malik didn't look away from Damon. "From the same place your brother got access to Vivian Ashford's personal data," he answered, "illegally." Damon's laugh was quick, sharp, desperate. "This is a setup." Malik's tone didn't rise. "No," he said. "This is accountability." For one strange heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then the chairman said, "We'll take a recess." And as chairs scraped and suits shifted, Malik heard it, faint, almost swallowed by the movement of the room, the quiet tick of Vivian's pocket watch. Counting down, counting down, counting down. And Malik knew with a certainty that shocked him that the most dangerous part of this story wasn't Damon. It was what Malik had started to care about. Because a few weeks earlier, none of this had existed. Not the loft in the sky, not the contract, not the rules about touch and distance, not the way Vivian's eyes searched for exits even when she was winning, not the way Nia had begun to smile at a woman who wasn't supposed to stay. To understand how Malik Grant ended up in this room, how he became the man holding the match over a villain's carefully stacked lies, you had to go back. Back to the moment a Navy envelope hit the floor. Chicago in early spring was a city that hadn't decided whether it wanted to forgive winter. Wind still ran between buildings like it had somewhere urgent to be. The lake looked like steel. The sky was often the color of unspoken apologies. Malik Grant woke up before the city felt awake. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. The alarm was soft, but it still felt like a punch because Malik's sleep never went deep anymore. Not since the hospital, not since the machines, not since the day he learned what silence could cost. He lay there for half a second, staring at the ceiling of his small apartment in Bronzeville. The paint was clean but thin, like it had been redone quickly. The air smelled faintly of laundry detergent, and the vanilla candle Nia had insisted made their home smell like hugs. He sat up slowly so the floorboards wouldn't creak too loudly. The apartment was quiet, but Malik's mind wasn't. It played the same list every morning. Rent, school fees, the hospital debt, the letter from collections, the overtime request he couldn't say no to, the overtime that still wasn't enough. He brushed his teeth in the dim bathroom light, eyes tired but focused. In the mirror, he saw a man in his 30s who looked older in the corners of his face. Not because he didn't take care of himself. Malik still ironed his shirts, still kept his beard neat, still showed up looking like a professional. But grief had a way of living under the skin. He stepped into Nia's room. She was a small shape under a blanket patterned with cartoon stars, her curly hair spreading across the pillow like she'd been dropped there by a gentle storm. One hand was clenched around a stuffed bunny with one ear bent permanently. Malik crouched beside her bed. "Nia," he whispered, voice softer than everything else in the world. "Morning, Peanut." She didn't move at first, then squinted as if the light itself offended her. "Is it school day?" she mumbled. "It is." Malik smiled, just a little. "But we can be brave." She opened one eye. "You'll pick me up?" The question was the same every day, always the same fear underneath it. Malik's chest tightened, but he didn't let it show. He reached out and brushed her hair back. "Always." "Promise?" "Promise." Nia studied his face like she was checking for cracks. Then she sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Can I have pancakes?" Malik laughed quietly. "You want pancakes every day." "Because pancakes are happy," she said, like it was obvious. Malik stood and helped her out of bed. "Then happy it is." He made pancakes while Nia sat at the table coloring a picture, her favorite thing lately, drawing people as stick figures with huge hearts. One heart in the drawing was always bigger than the others. That heart used to be labeled Mom. Now, the space for that label stayed blank. Malik tried not to look at it too long. He packed her backpack, signed a permission slip, and checked his phone for work emails while flipping pancakes. A notification from a debt collector appeared. Payment overdue. Final notice. He closed it without reading the rest. Then he put on a smile and slid pancakes onto Nia's plate like he wasn't carrying a storm inside his ribs. "You got this today," he told her. Nia dipped her pancake in syrup and nodded solemnly, like bravery was a job. When he dropped her off at school, she hugged him extra tight. "I love you bigger than the sky," she said. Malik's throat tightened. "I love you bigger than the lake." She grinned and ran inside. Malik watched her disappear and stayed there for a moment longer than necessary. Then he turned toward the train station, shoulders squared. Because love didn't pay the bills, and Malik Grant had learned the hard way that the world didn't pause for pain. Ashford Meridian Group's downtown headquarters rose like a statement. Steel, glass, confidence. Inside, the lobby was marble and silence, filled with people who walked like their time was worth more than anyone else's. Malik had worked there for 3 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the building, the way power moved through it like electricity. He was in internal compliance, a role that required precision, discretion, and a certain kind of quiet strength. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, he was reliable. And in a place like AMG, reliability was either respected or exploited. Most days, Malik wasn't sure which it was. He scanned his badge, rode the elevator, and stepped into the open-plan floor. A coworker nodded. "Morning, Malik." "Morning," Malik said, polite. His desk was tidy. Laptop, notebook, a framed photo of Nia on her first day of kindergarten, grinning like the world couldn't hurt her. He stared at that photo for half a second, then opened his inbox. Work was a wall he could lean against. If he stayed busy, he didn't have to remember. If he stayed busy, he didn't have to feel. At 10:17 a.m., an email came down from the executive floor. CEO requesting compliance summary report. Immediate. Malik's fingers paused. CEO, Vivian Ashford. He'd seen her, of course, everyone had. Vivian Ashford was the kind of leader people whispered about in elevators. She was young for her position, brutally competent, and rumored to have ice where most people had mercy. She rarely spoke to anyone outside her direct circle. And she definitely didn't request reports from a mid-level compliance analyst unless something mattered. Malik pulled the report up, cleaned it, cross-checked it twice, and sent it upstairs. He told himself it was just business. He told himself he didn't care. But a strange pressure settled between his shoulders anyway, like the air had shifted. It happened at 6:42 p.m. The building was thinning out. Most employees had already escaped. Malik stayed because overtime was how he kept the lights on. He stepped into the elevator with his laptop bag, shoulders tired, mind already on what he'd make for dinner. The elevator doors slid closed, and then, at the last second, someone's hand slid between the doors. The doors reopened. Vivian Ashford stepped in. Malik's body went still out of instinct, the way people went still around power. Vivian wore a charcoal coat over a tailored suit. Her hair was pinned back cleanly. Her face was calm in a way that didn't invite conversation. She didn't look at Malik. The doors shut again. The elevator began to descend. For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the cables. Then, as the elevator shifted slightly, something slipped from Vivian's coat pocket. A navy envelope. It hit the floor near Malik's shoes. Vivian didn't notice immediately. Malik stared at it. He shouldn't touch it. He knew that. It could be confidential. It could be personal. It could be something that, if mishandled, would cost him his job. But it was right there. And Malik had been raised with a simple rule. If something isn't yours, you return it. He bent down, picked it up carefully with 2 fingers, and held it out. "Ms. Ashford," he said. Vivian's eyes snapped to him, sharp, assessing, like she was used to threats disguised as politeness. She saw the envelope in his hand. For the smallest fraction of a second, something shifted in her expression. Not softness, something closer to surprise. "That's mine," she said, voice controlled. "Yes," Malik answered. "It fell." She reached for it. His fingers tightened slightly, not possessive, cautious. "It's sealed," Malik said. "I didn't open it." Vivian's gaze bored into him. "You could have," she said. "I didn't," Malik replied simply. The elevator continued downward. Vivian took the envelope. Her fingers brushed his for the briefest moment, accidental, unavoidable. Malik felt a strange jolt. Not romantic, not electric in the usual way, more like the sudden awareness that she was human. Not a title, not a rumor, a person. Vivian slid the envelope into her coat pocket. "Thank you," she said, and it sounded unfamiliar in her mouth, like she didn't use those words often. Malik nodded. "Of course." The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Vivian stepped out. Then she paused, half turning, and looked at Malik fully for the first time. "What's your name?" Malik hesitated. "Malik Grant." Vivian repeated it softly, like she was cataloging it. "Grant." She reached into her wallet, pulled out a card, and held it out. Malik glanced at it. A crisp black card. A number. "I don't need," he started. "It's not a tip," Vivian said, voice flattening. "It's contact, in case you ever need something." Malik's jaw tightened. He'd had people offer him help before. It never came without strings. He didn't take the card. "I'm good," Malik said politely. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "No one is good in this city," she said. Malik met her gaze. "Maybe, but I'm still not taking it." For a moment, the air between them felt like a test. Then Vivian lowered her hand slowly, card still in her fingers. "Interesting," she murmured, almost to herself. And then she walked away. Malik watched her go. He should have forgotten it. It was a small moment, nothing more. But later that night, as he washed dishes and listened to Nia talk about a classmate who'd brought a lizard to show and tell, Malik kept seeing Vivian's face in the elevator. Not her coldness, her surprise. Like she wasn't used to people doing the right thing without expecting payment. 2 days later, Malik was called upstairs, not by email, by assistant. He entered the executive floor where carpet softened footsteps and offices had doors that closed like secrets. Vivian's assistant led him to her office and left him there. Malik stood for a second, then walked in. Vivian was behind her desk, working. She didn't look up right away. "Mr. Grant," she said finally. "Yes, ma'am." "Sit." Malik sat. Vivian slid a folder toward him. "You sent a report. It was correct. Most people send summaries that are convenient. Yours wasn't." Malik didn't know how to respond. "I try to be accurate." "I don't care about try." Vivian's eyes flicked up. "I care about results." Malik nodded. Vivian's gaze held him. "Why didn't you take the card?" There it was. Malik kept his posture steady. "Because I didn't want to owe you anything." Vivian leaned back slightly. "You don't owe me for returning my envelope." "It depends on who's holding the debt," Malik said quietly. Vivian stared at him as if she hadn't expected that answer. "People usually want something," she said. Malik's lips pressed together. "Maybe they're tired of being overlooked." Vivian's expression tightened. For a moment, Malik thought he'd pushed too far. Then Vivian tapped her pen against the desk once. "I'm going to ask you something," she said. Malik's spine straightened. "Okay." Vivian's voice lowered. "Are you married?" Malik blinked. The question hit him like a door opening to a room he hadn't entered in a long time. He swallowed. "No." "Divorced?" Malik's fingers tightened slightly on his knee. "Widower." Vivian's eyes sharpened, not with pity, but with something like calculation turning suddenly human. "And you have a child," Vivian said, not asking. Malik nodded. "A daughter." Vivian looked away, gaze drifting to the window. Outside, the sky was pale and windy, the city like a machine turning without rest. When she spoke again, her tone was flat, but Malik sensed something trembling beneath it. "I need a husband." Malik stared. "Excuse me?" Vivian's eyes snapped back. "A husband, on paper, publicly, convincingly." Malik's stomach dropped. "Ms. Ashford, I'm an employee." "I know exactly what you are," Vivian said coolly. "And that's why you're in this chair." Malik's pulse quickened. "This is inappropriate." Vivian didn't flinch. "It's strategic." She slid another folder toward him. Malik didn't touch it. Vivian spoke like she was reading from a contract already written in her mind. "My father's will includes a clause. If I'm not married before I turn 30, I lose controlling authority. My brother, Damon, takes it." Malik's brows drew together. "That's ridiculous." Vivian's laugh was humorless. "Yes, and legally binding." Malik hesitated. "Why not marry someone you actually—" He stopped himself. Vivian's eyes turned colder. "Trust?" she finished for him. She leaned forward. "Because I don't trust anyone in my world. And because a real marriage gives Damon access to leverage. A fake one is contained." Malik's voice came out rougher. "Contained?" Vivian nodded. 1 year. We present as married. We attend required events. We share a residence. You follow rules. You receive compensation." Malik exhaled. "This is... You want me to pretend?" "Yes," Vivian said. Malik looked at her, truly looked. She was beautiful, in the way a blade could be beautiful, sharp, controlled, unyielding. But beneath the control, Malik saw something else, a loneliness that felt older than her age. He swallowed. "I can't." Vivian's expression didn't change. She opened the folder herself and slid the top page out so Malik could see. Numbers. Debt numbers. His debt. Malik's blood went cold. "How did you—" "AMG has healthcare billing ties," Vivian said, like it was nothing. "And your debt is significant." Malik's jaw clenched. "You looked into my—" I verified risk, Vivian corrected. Malik stood abruptly. No, this is... Vivian's voice sharpened. Sit down. Malik froze. Then, slowly, he sat. Vivian's tone softened just a degree. Not warm, but less sharp. I'm not threatening you, she said. I'm offering you a solution. Malik stared at the numbers, at the reality printed in black ink. Vivian continued. I will pay your medical debt. I will double your salary. I will establish an education fund for your daughter. In exchange, you give me 1 year. Malik's heart pounded. The offer was a lifeboat, and lifeboats came with ropes. He thought of Nia's question every morning, "You'll pick me up?" He thought of the collection notices. He thought of how, last week, he'd pretended not to hear Nia whispering to her stuffed bunny at night, "Mom, I miss you. Don't take Dad too." Malik's throat tightened. Vivian watched him carefully, like she was watching a door decide whether to open. "What are the rules?" Malik asked, voice low. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she'd already prepared for this. No romantic involvement, she said. No intimacy, no touching unless required in public. No personal questions unless necessary for the narrative. And if either of us chooses to end it early, we do it cleanly, without scandal. Malik let out a slow breath. 1 year. 1 year of playing a role. 1 year of living in a lie to protect his child from the truth of poverty and grief. His pride screamed no. His love for Nia whispered yes. He looked up at Vivian. "If I do this," Malik said, "my daughter stays protected." Vivian's gaze held. "Yes." Malik's voice cracked slightly. "She comes first." Vivian nodded once. "Fine." Malik stared at the contract. Then, as if signing was a kind of surrender, he reached for the pen. "Okay," he said. Vivian's eyes didn't soften, but something in her posture loosened, barely, like a lock clicking into place. The Sky Dome loft didn't feel like a home. It felt like the top floor of a museum. Glass walls, white furniture, city lights reflected everywhere, making Malik feel like he was living inside a diamond. Beautiful, expensive, and cold. Vivian gave him a tour like she was showing him a property she didn't plan to live in. "This is your room," she said, pointing to a clean, modern bedroom with a view of the lake. Malik stepped inside. The bed was made perfectly. The sheets looked untouched by human life. "My daughter will visit?" Malik asked. Vivian hesitated just a second. "Yes," she said. "We'll arrange a schedule. She can have the second guest room." Malik nodded. Vivian moved toward the kitchen. "Rules are posted," she said, gesturing to a clipboard on the wall. Malik walked over and read them. 1. Public image comes first. 2. No unnecessary physical contact. 3. Personal space is respected. 4. Confidentiality at all times. 5. No improvisation in front of the Ashford family. Malik's mouth tightened. "You have rules on a clipboard." Vivian's tone was flat. "It prevents mistakes." Malik glanced at her. "Or feelings." Vivian's eyes flicked to him, sharp. "Feelings create liabilities." Malik didn't argue, because he was already afraid of what he might feel. The first time they appeared in public as a couple, it was at an AMG charity gala. Vivian wore a black dress that made her look like the night itself, beautiful, untouchable, dangerous. Malik wore a tailored suit that fit his body well, but he felt like an intruder among men who'd never had to count pennies. Vivian slipped her arm through his. "Smile," she murmured without looking up. Malik forced a calm expression. "You smile." "I am," Vivian said, lips barely lifting. They moved through the room, greeting donors and executives. Vivian's voice became smoother, warmer, a mask that fit her perfectly. Malik realized with a strange ache that Vivian Ashford could perform intimacy like a professional. It wasn't real, but it was convincing. A reporter approached. "Ms. Ashford, quick question. How does it feel to be newly married?" Vivian turned slightly toward Malik, her eyes softening for the camera. It feels, she paused just long enough to make it sound genuine, steady. Then she looked up at Malik like she was looking for safety. It was a perfect illusion. The reporter smiled. "And you, Mr. Ashford." Malik's heart punched once. Mr. Ashford. He didn't belong to that name. But he thought of Mia, of stability, of pancakes and brave mornings. He smiled politely. "It feels like something worth protecting," he said. Vivian's eyes flickered. Just a flicker. But Malik felt it. The first family dinner happened at Ashford House in Evanston. The mansion was old money and polished surfaces. Portraits of Ashford men hung in the hallway like they were watching. Vivian's step was steady as they walked in, but Malik noticed how her shoulders tightened. Like her body remembered being judged here.
A woman approached. Vivian's aunt or cousin, Malik couldn't tell. Wealth blurred people into similar expressions.
"Vivian," the woman cooed. "Finally, we were beginning to think you'd die alone." Vivian's smile was razor thin. "Good evening, Clara." Clara's eyes moved to Malik. "And this is the husband." Malik offered his hand. "Malik." Clara didn't take it immediately. She looked him up and down, eyes pausing too long. "Ashford taste has changed," she said lightly. Vivian's arm tightened around Malik's. Then a man stepped into the room, Damon Ashford. He had Vivian's bone structure but none of her restraint. He moved like someone who enjoyed watching others squirm. "Well," Damon said, voice smooth, "the famous husband." Vivian's expression didn't change. "Damon." Damon's gaze slid to Malik. "Grant," he said, like tasting the name. "Or are you Ashford now? Hard to keep track." Malik kept his face calm. "I'm Malik." Damon smiled. "Bold."
Most people here introduce themselves with their job titles.
Malik met his eyes. "I don't think my worth fits neatly on a business card." Damon's smile sharpened. "Oh, I like you," he lied. Dinner felt like a test disguised as conversation. Questions about Malik's background, his upbringing, his education, asked politely but aimed like darts. When Malik mentioned Bronzeville, someone's brows rose. When Malik mentioned his daughter, someone smiled too sweetly. "And the mother?" Clara asked. "Where is she?" Malik's fingers tightened around his fork. Vivian spoke before Malik could. "That's not dinner conversation," she said calmly. Clara blinked. "Oh, forgive me. I didn't realize grief was so sensitive." Vivian's eyes hardened. "It is when you have a soul." Silence hit the table like a plate breaking. Damon chuckled. "Vivian," he said, tone amused. "Still charming." Malik felt Vivian's knee brushes under the table. A signal. Stay steady.
He reached down, not touching her skin, but placing his hand near her, close enough that the camera of memory would read it as closeness.
Vivian's breath shifted, and Malik realized something unsettling. Vivian's coldness wasn't cruelty, it was defense. The performance continued for weeks. They learned each other's lines. Malik learned to stand close enough that it looked like affection. Vivian learned how to lower her voice when she said his name, as if it belonged in her mouth. Nia visited on weekends. The first time she stepped into the loft, she gasped. "Dad," she whispered, eyes huge. "Is this a castle?" Malik smiled faintly, something like that. Vivian watched Nia from across the room like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to breathe around children. Nia looked up at Vivian. "Are you my dad's friend?" Vivian froze. Malik crouched beside Nia. "Vivian is someone helping us right now," he said carefully. Nia tilted her head. "Are you going to be my mom?" Malik's heart stopped. Vivian's face went still. Then Vivian crouched slowly, stiff like she hadn't done it in years. Her voice came out quieter than Malik expected. "I'm not here to replace anyone," Vivian said. Nia's eyes narrowed with the seriousness only kids had. "But can you stay?" Vivian's throat moved. She didn't answer immediately. Malik watched her, feeling something twist inside him.
Finally, Vivian said, "I will do my best." Nia smiled, satisfied. "Okay, do you like pancakes?" Vivian blinked. "I don't know." Nia grabbed her hand like it was obvious. "Then we'll teach you." Vivian stiffened at the touch, but she didn't pull away. Malik looked away quickly, because it hurt, because it looked like hope. And Malik had learned hope could be expensive.
The night the power went out came without warning. A storm rolled in off the lake, wind slamming into the glass walls of the loft like fists. Malik was in the kitchen making tea. Vivian was on the couch with her laptop, still working like rest was a weakness. Lightning flashed. Then, darkness. The lights died. The city outside still glowed, but their loft went suddenly quiet and dim, lit only by the faint spill of streetlight and distant buildings. Vivian's laptop shut down with a small, defeated sound. Malik heard her inhale sharply. He turned. "Backup generator." Vivian didn't move. "This building has one," she said. "Sometimes it fails." Malik's eyes adjusted. Vivian sat perfectly still, hands in her lap. And for the first time, Malik saw it clearly. She wasn't annoyed. She was afraid. Not in a dramatic way, in the silent, lockdown way of someone who didn't like the world out of her control. Malik moved toward the drawer where he'd seen candles. He lit them carefully, one by one. Warm light bloomed in the room, softening the sharp edges of the loft. Vivian stared at the flame. "I hate the dark," she admitted, voice barely above the wind. Malik set a candle on the coffee table. "Because you can't see what's coming." Vivian's eyes flicked to him. "Because when I was young," she said quietly, "the dark meant no one was coming." Malik felt the words land in his chest like weight. He sat on the opposite end of the couch, leaving distance, respecting the clipboard rules without needing to look at them. For a long time they listened to the storm. Then Malik spoke, voice low, steady. "My wife used to say storms were the city cleaning itself." Vivian's gaze stayed on the candle. "Did you believe her?" "I wanted to," Malik said. Silence again. Then Vivian asked, almost reluctantly, "How did she die?" Malik's fingers tightened around his mug. He didn't want to talk about it. Talking made it real again. But the storm had cut the world away, and in the candlelight, Vivian looked less like a CEO and more like someone trapped inside her own armor. Malik exhaled. "Cancer," he said. "We fought it for 2 years. Then we ran out of fight." Vivian's eyes softened, just barely. "And you ran out of money." Malik's jaw tightened. "Yes." Vivian swallowed. "I'm sorry." Malik laughed once, bitter and quiet. "People always say that, but they don't know what they're apologizing for." Vivian's gaze stayed steady. "Then tell me," she said. Malik stared at the candle flame, watching it tremble. "I'm not angry that she died," he said slowly. "I'm angry that she had to worry about bills while she was dying. I'm angry that the last thing she asked me was whether Nia would be okay." His voice cracked slightly. Vivian didn't interrupt. Malik continued. "She held my face and said, 'Don't let the world harden you.' And I promised her I wouldn't." He laughed again, softer now. "I broke that promise the first time a collector called." Vivian's throat moved. Her hand shifted toward something on the table, the pocket watch. She picked it up, turning it in her fingers. "My father gave me this when I was 9, she said quietly. "He told me time was the only thing you couldn't buy back." Malik glanced at her. "Did he mean it as wisdom?" Vivian's mouth tightened. "No," she said. "He meant it as a warning." Malik watched her face. "What happened when you were 9? Vivian's eyes stayed on the watch. "I stopped expecting people to keep promises," she said. The wind pressed against the glass again, making the flame flicker. Vivian's voice lowered. "My mother left when I was 6. My father replaced her with meetings. Damon replaced affection with competition. And everyone in my family learned to love me only when I was useful." She let out a slow breath. "So I became useful." Malik's chest tightened. That's a lonely way to live." Vivian's laugh was quiet. "It works." "It keeps you alive," Malik said, "but it doesn't keep you warm." Vivian looked at him then, truly looked. In the candlelight, her eyes were darker than Malik expected. Tired, hungry for something she didn't know how to ask for. Malik felt the air shift between them. Something fragile, something dangerous. Vivian's voice went softer. "If you weren't desperate," she said, "you wouldn't have signed." Malik didn't deny it. "No." Vivian's gaze dropped to his hands. "If I wasn't afraid," she said, "I wouldn't have asked." Malik's breath caught. For a moment, the clipboard rules felt like paper in a storm. Vivian's fingers tightened around the pocket watch chain until it pressed into her skin. Then she said, "We should sleep." Malik nodded, throat tight. "Yeah." He stood, and for the briefest moment, Vivian looked like she wanted to say something else. But she didn't. And Malik walked away, carrying the weight of a conversation that had changed the air in the loft permanently. Because after that night, the lie wasn't clean anymore. It had fingerprints. Damon moved like a shadow wearing expensive cologne. He didn't attack openly. He waited, observed, collected. He began inviting Malik to casual conversations after board-adjacent events. He asked questions that sounded friendly but felt like knives. "How's the loft?" Damon would say. "Is Vivian tolerable at home?" Malik learned to answer with nothing. "She's my wife," Malik would say calmly. Damon would smile. On paper. The first time Malik realized Damon was watching him, it was subtle. A text message from an unknown number. "You don't belong there." Malik stared at it, thumb hovering. Then another message. "Name your price." Malik's stomach turned. He deleted the messages, but he couldn't delete the feeling, like someone had reached into his life and touched something sacred with dirty hands. He didn't tell Vivian immediately. He told himself he didn't want to worry her, but the truth was darker. He was afraid she'd assume the worst. Because Vivian Ashford had been trained by her world to expect betrayal. And Malik was an easy suspect, an employee with debt, suddenly living in a penthouse. The optics were ugly, and Damon knew that. A week later, Malik's workday ended late. He walked out of the building, coat pulled tight against the wind. A black car waited at the curb. The window rolled down. Damon Ashford's face appeared in the dark interior like a smirk made flesh. "Mr. Grant," Damon said, "get in." Malik's heartbeat quickened. "No." Damon's smile widened. "If you want to keep your job, you will." Malik hesitated. Then he opened the back door and slid in, because refusing Damon publicly could create a scene, and scenes were the currency Damon traded in. The car pulled away. For a moment, the city blurred by outside. Damon leaned back. "You're impressive," he said. "You've convinced the public. My sister looks almost human beside you." Malik kept his face calm. "Why are we talking?" Damon sighed like Malik was inconvenient. "Because we both know what this is," he said. "A contract, a performance, and performances end." Malik didn't respond. Damon continued, voice smooth. "Vivian is holding something that belongs to me." Malik's jaw tightened. "Her position belongs to her." Damon laughed. "Positions belong to whoever can keep them." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Grant, how much is your daughter's future worth?" Malik's blood went cold. Damon smiled softly. "See, I did my homework. Education fund, medical debt, you're drowning." Malik's hands clenched in his lap. "What do you want?" Damon's voice dropped. "I want you to walk away at the right moment," he said. "During the next board meeting, when we vote on strategic control. I want you to publicly admit this marriage is fake." Malik's heartbeat thundered. Damon leaned closer, eyes glittering. "If you do," Damon said, "I'll pay your debts twice over. I'll give your daughter a private school scholarship that makes that little fund look like pocket change. I'll set you up with a job that doesn't require you to bow to anyone."
Malik's throat tightened. It was everything Malik had ever wanted for Nia. Everything. And it came from a man whose smile didn't reach his eyes. Damon studied Malik carefully. "You're thinking," Damon murmured. Malik forced his voice to stay steady. "And if I refuse?" Damon's smile sharpened. "Then I make sure everyone knows Vivian Ashford married a man who needed saving," he said. "I make sure the board sees her as reckless.
And I make sure your sweet little daughter experiences instability you can't imagine." Malik's vision sharpened. His pulse roared in his ears. "You'd threaten a child," Malik said quietly. Damon shrugged. "I'd threaten anything that stands between me and what I'm owed." Malik stared at him, and in that moment, Malik didn't see a rival. He saw a predator. Malik's hand slid into his coat pocket, thumb finding the edge of his phone. He pressed the recording button without looking. He kept his face calm. "What if I don't want your money?" Malik asked. Damon laughed. "Everyone wants money," he said. Malik's voice stayed even. "Not if it costs my soul." Damon's smile faltered slightly. "Soul," he repeated, like it was a childish word. Malik leaned back. "You asked me what my daughter's future is worth," Malik said. "It's worth everything, which is why I'm not handing it to a man like you." Damon's eyes hardened. "Be careful, Grant." Malik met his gaze. "I am." The car slowed. Damon leaned back, voice turning colder. "Then you'll regret it." The car pulled to the curb. Malik opened the door, stepped out, and the wind hit him like the city itself was trying to wake him up. He walked away without looking back. But the recording continued in his pocket until the car drove off. Because Malik had learned something important, sometimes survival wasn't about taking the offer. Sometimes survival was about refusing to become the kind of man your child would fear. Malik didn't go home immediately. He went to a 24-hour diner near the river, sat in a booth, and listened to the recording once. Damon's voice poured out of the speaker, calm, cruel, confident. Malik felt sick. He closed his eyes and thought of Vivian in candlelight, admitting fear like it was a sin. He thought of Nia grabbing Vivian's hand. He thought of the pocket watch ticking down. Malik realized he wasn't just protecting a job. He was protecting the fragile beginning of something neither he nor Vivian had planned for. He left the diner and went back to the loft. Vivian was still awake, sitting in the living room with her laptop open, backup power restored. She looked up when Malik entered. Her eyes narrowed. "Where were you?" Malik hesitated. Vivian stood, posture tight. "You disappeared," she said, "and Damon called me tonight." Malik's stomach dropped. "He called you?" Vivian's voice was clipped. "He asked if you were enjoying the benefits of being an Ashford," she said. "He implied you might be negotiating." Malik's chest tightened. Here it was, the exact moment he'd been afraid of. Vivian's eyes searched his face like she was looking for proof of betrayal. Malik could tell her everything, right now. But if he told her, Damon would know he'd failed. Damon would adjust, and Malik needed the board meeting to trap him. So Malik swallowed his truth and chose a harder path. Patience. "I'm not negotiating," Malik said simply. Vivian's eyes stayed sharp. "Then where were you?" Malik forced his voice calm. "Handling something," he said. "For us." Vivian's jaw tightened. "That's not an answer." Malik's voice softened. "Vivian, I'm on your side." Vivian flinched slightly, like the words themselves were dangerous. "You don't get to say that," she said quietly. "People say that right before they leave." Malik's throat tightened. "I'm not leaving." Vivian's eyes glistened for a half a second, so fast Malik almost missed it. Then she turned away. "Fine," she said, voice cold again. "Do what you want." She walked into her room and shut the door. Malik stood in the living room, the loft suddenly too large, too empty. He wanted to knock, to explain, to offer the recording as proof, but he didn't.
because this was bigger than comfort. It was strategy. And Malik hated that he had to become strategic to protect someone who didn't know how to be protected.
He sat down, head in his hands, and breathed. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass. Inside, Malik listened to the quiet tick of the pocket watch Vivian sometimes left on the table. Tick, tick, tick. Counting down to the board meeting. Counting down to truth. The morning of the board meeting felt unreal. Malik woke up early, stared at the ceiling, and thought of Aaliyah. Don't let the world harden you. He thought of Mia's face when she asked if Vivian could stay. He thought of Vivian's fear in the dark. Then he got up and dressed like a man walking into a storm. Vivian emerged from her room in a tailored gray suit, hair pinned back, face unreadable. For a moment, Malik thought she wouldn't speak. Then Vivian said, "We will be watched today." Malik nodded. "I know." Vivian's gaze flicked to his. "Don't improvise." Malik held her gaze calmly. "I won't." Vivian's jaw tightened as if she wanted to say something else, something personal, something risky, but she didn't. She picked up her pocket watch from the counter, closed it, and slipped it into her purse. A tiny click, like a door locking. At AMG headquarters, the boardroom waited like a courtroom. The directors filed in, faces serious. Damon arrived last, wearing confidence like a suit. He greeted the chairman, smiled at a few directors, then looked at Vivian. "Sister," he said, voice warm enough to fool strangers, "you look tense." Vivian's smile was faint and sharp. "You look overeager." Damon laughed as if it was a joke. Then his gaze slid to Malik and stopped. Damon's smile tightened. A warning. Malik didn't react. He took his seat near Vivian, posture steady. The meeting began with numbers and strategy. Then the chairman cleared his throat. "We need to address concerns raised about Ms. Ashford's recent marriage," he said carefully. "Some directors have expressed concern about optics." Damon leaned forward slightly, voice smooth. "It's unfortunate," he said, "but the company's stability matters. If Vivian's decision-making has been compromised by a personal arrangement..." Vivian's eyes hardened. "My decisions have increased revenue by 12%, she said calmly. "I'd hardly call that compromised." Damon spread his hands. "I'm not questioning your competence," he lied. "I'm questioning the legitimacy of the situation." A director, older, stern, looked at Malik. "Mr. Ashford," he said, tasting the name as if unsure it belonged on Malik. "Can you speak to the nature of this marriage?" Malik's pulse kicked. Vivian's gaze flicked to him, warning and pleading all at once. Malik stood slowly. His palms were steady. The room watched him. Some curious, some suspicious, some already decided. Malik looked at the director and then at Damon. He reached into his jacket. For a heartbeat, Damon's eyes brightened, expecting surrender. But Malik pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. The same soft click from the flash forward. The room stilled. "What is this?" the chairman asked. Malik's voice was clear. "Evidence," he said. Damon's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" Malik didn't look at him. He looked at the board. "Damon Ashford approached me," Malik said, "to bribe me into publicly discrediting Vivian Ashford." Gasps moved through the room like a wave. Damon laughed sharply. "That's absurd." Malik pressed play. Damon's voice filled the room, confident, cruel, unguarded. "How much is your daughter's future worth? If you do, I'll pay your debts twice over. And I make sure your sweet little daughter experiences instability you can't imagine." The room went colder. A director's face tightened in disgust. The chairman's eyes narrowed. Vivian sat very still, her expression controlled. But Malik saw the way her hand drifted toward her purse, toward the pocket watch. Damon's face had gone pale. He stood. "This is illegal," he snapped. Malik's voice stayed calm. "Bribery is illegal," he replied. Damon's gaze burned. "You recorded me without consent." Malik's eyes didn't blink. "I recorded a threat against my child." That sentence landed like a hammer. A director spoke, voice sharp. "Mr. Ashford, Damon, did you threaten a child?" Damon's lips parted, then closed, because he couldn't lie his way out of a recording. Malik continued, voice steady. "And there's more." He placed the folder on the table. The chairman opened it. Pages of logs, timestamps, access records. A director frowned. "What is this?" Malik looked at Damon. "Proof of unauthorized access," he said. Damon Ashford used internal systems to access Vivian Ashford's personal information, medical records, private communications, data he had no right to touch. The board members stiffened. Vivian's eyes flashed. Damon's voice rose. "This is a setup. She's manipulating." Vivian finally spoke, voice cold enough to freeze the room. "You violated me," she said quietly, "to take my chair." Damon snapped. "You never deserved it." The chairman slammed a hand on the table. "Enough!" Silence fell. The chairman looked around the room, face grave. "We are taking an immediate vote on Damon Ashford's status," he said, "pending legal review." The vote was swift, decisive. Damon's seat cracked beneath him, not physically, but in the way power can evaporate. The chairman turned to Vivian. "Ms. Ashford," he said carefully, "you retain your position, for now." Vivian didn't smile. She didn't look relieved. She looked tired. Then the chairman continued, tone uncomfortable. "However, the board requires the marriage situation be resolved, publicly, cleanly." Vivian's jaw tightened. Malik's stomach dropped. The chairman spoke slowly. "You will dissolve the marriage within 30 days, for the company's stability." The room felt suddenly too bright. Vivian's face didn't change, but Malik saw her eyes flicker. 30 days. A clean ending. A controlled exit. The contract had a countdown after all. Damon laughed once, bitter, standing with a rage that had nowhere to land. "Look at that," he spat. "Even when you win, you lose." Security approached him. Damon's gaze locked on Malik. "You made an enemy," he hissed. Malik's voice didn't rise. "You were already an enemy," he said. Damon was escorted out. The doors shut behind him. The room exhaled. Vivian sat still, gaze forward. Malik looked at her and realized something. He had saved her company, but he might have doomed what had started to grow between them. Because the board didn't care about truth, it cared about appearances, and appearances demanded a sacrifice. The 30 days passed like slow water. Vivian and Malik continued the performance in public, smiling for cameras, attending events, standing close, touching hands when required. But in private, the loft became quieter, not cold like before. Worse, tender. Because now they knew each other, and knowing made distance hurt more. Nia noticed. Kids always did. One night, while Malik tucked her into bed in the guest room, she whispered, "Are you and Vivian mad?" Malik's throat tightened. "No, Peanut." "Then why do you look sad?" Malik's smile was small and fragile. "Sometimes adults look sad even when they're okay." Nia frowned. "That sounds like lying." Malik laughed softly. "You might be right." Nia's voice lowered. "Is Vivian gonna go away?" Malik froze. He wanted to say no. He wanted to promise. But promises had already cost him too much. So he said the only honest thing. "I don't know," Malik whispered. Nia's eyes glistened. "But you'll still pick me up, right?" Malik's chest tightened so hard it hurt. "Always," he said, and he meant it with everything he had. On the final day, Malik packed his things. It wasn't much. A few suits, a few books, a framed photo of Nia. He carried the box toward the elevator. Vivian stood in the living room, hands at her sides, expression controlled. She looked like she was watching herself be abandoned. Malik set the box down near the door. "I'll sign whatever needs to be signed," he said quietly. "Public statement, too." Vivian nodded once. "My legal team will handle it." Silence stretched. The city lights outside looked distant, indifferent. Malik's voice went softer. Vivian, thank you. Vivian's eyes flickered. For what? For helping my daughter, Malik said. For paying the debt. For. He stopped because the rest wasn't contractual. For showing Nia that adults could be kind. For letting Malik feel something again. Vivian's jaw tightened. You did your job, she said. Malik's throat tightened. Is that all it was? Vivian didn't answer. Because if she answered honestly, the room might break. Malik looked at her for a long moment, memorizing the shape of her face like he was afraid it would vanish. Then he spoke quietly. I meant what I said in that gala, Malik said, about protecting something worth protecting. Vivian's eyes glistened for the briefest second. Then she turned away, and that was her answer. Malik picked up the box and walked out. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time since the contract began, Malik felt a kind of loneliness that wasn't financial. It was personal. It was quiet. It was the absence of a person who had started to feel like home. Weeks passed. Malik returned to his apartment in Bronzeville. It felt smaller than before, not because it had changed, because Malik had. The education fund was real, the debt was paid, the stability was in place. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt like he'd survived a shipwreck only to miss the storm. Nia adapted faster than Malik expected. Kids were resilient like that. But sometimes Malik caught her staring out the window with her stuffed bunny in her arms. Thinking about Vivian? Malik asked one evening. Nia nodded. She smelled like fancy soap, she said thoughtfully. Malik chuckled. She probably did. Nia looked at him. Do you miss her? Malik paused, then nodded. Yeah, he admitted. Nia frowned. Then why don't you go get her? Malik's laugh came out sad. Because that's not how it works. Nia tilted her head. Why? Malik didn't have an answer that a 7-year-old would accept, so he just said, because adults make messy choices. Nia studied him. Maybe you should make a less messy one. Malik stared at his daughter, stunned by the simplicity of her logic. Sometimes children saw the truth because they hadn't learned to fear it yet. Vivian Ashford returned to her routine: work, meetings, strategy, control. But the company felt different now, because she had won, and the victory tasted like dust. At night, she sat alone in the Sky Dome loft, the glass walls reflecting her like a ghost. The clipboard rules still hung on the kitchen wall. She'd never taken them down. As if keeping them up could pretend she hadn't broken them in her mind 100 times. Vivian found herself looking at her pocket watch more often, not to count time, to hear the ticking, to remind herself she was still here. One evening she opened a drawer and found something she hadn't put there consciously: a drawing. Nia's drawing. Stick figures with huge hearts. One heart labeled Dad. One heart labeled Vivian. Vivian's throat tightened. She didn't cry. She didn't allow herself to. But she sat very still with the drawing in her hands, and for the first time in her life, she admitted a thought she'd trained herself never to think. What if I chose something for me? Not a board, not a legacy, not a clause in a will. Something human, something warm, something terrifyingly real. Vivian stared at the drawing. Then she reached for her phone. She didn't call her assistant. She didn't call her lawyer. She didn't call anyone who would turn feelings into strategy. She called Malik. They met on a Saturday afternoon by the lake, in a small cafe that didn't look like Vivian belonged there. No security, no entourage, no polished performance. Malik arrived wearing a simple coat, hair neat, eyes cautious. Vivian stood when he entered. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The air between them felt different without the contract. No roles, no rules, just two people with bruised hearts and the memory of pretending. Malik spoke first, voice gentle. Hi. Vivian swallowed. Hi. She gestured toward the table. Sit. They sat. Vivian placed a navy envelope on the table between them. Malik's eyes flicked to it, tension rising. What is this? Vivian's voice was quiet. "It's not money," she said. Malik studied her face. "Then what?" Vivian opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single letter, handwritten. Malik's brows rose. Vivian slid it toward him. "I wrote it," she said. Malik didn't touch it immediately, as if he was afraid it would burn. Vivian's fingers trembled slightly, the first time Malik had ever seen her unable to control her hands. Vivian cleared her throat. "I spent my whole life believing everything was a transaction," she said quietly. "Affection, loyalty, family." Malik listened, heart beating slow and heavy. Vivian continued. "Then you returned an envelope and refused to take anything," she said, "and I hated you for it." Malik blinked, surprised. "You hated me?" Vivian's mouth tightened. "Because it reminded me I didn't know how to be decent without calculating it." Malik's throat tightened. Vivian's eyes glistened. "You stood in that boardroom and protected me," she whispered. "You protected my privacy, my dignity, and you didn't have to." Malik's voice came out low. "I wanted to." Vivian inhaled, shaky. Then she said the words like she was stepping off a cliff. "I don't want a contract anymore." Malik's eyes held hers. "Vivian, I don't want rules on a clipboard," she said, voice breaking slightly. "I don't want to touch your hand only when cameras are watching. I don't want to pretend like you didn't matter." Malik's breath caught. Vivian swallowed. "I want to meet you," she said, "as myself." She placed something else on the table, a folded piece of paper. Malik opened it. It was Nia's drawing. Malik's throat tightened. Vivian's voice went softer. "She left it in the loft," Vivian said. "I kept it." Malik's eyes lifted, wet. "Why?" Vivian's gaze didn't waver. "Because it made me feel included," she admitted. Malik stared at her. Vivian Ashford, the woman who ran a corporate empire, looked like she was asking for permission to be human. Malik's voice went quiet. "This isn't easy," he said. Vivian nodded. "I know." Malik's eyes held hers. "My daughter comes first." Vivian's voice was steady. "She should." Malik swallowed. "And I'm not looking for someone to save me." Vivian's gaze softened. "Good," she said. "I don't want to save you. I want to stand with you." Silence stretched between them. Outside the cafe window, the lake was gray-blue and endless. The city wind pressed softly against the glass, gentler than usual, like it was listening. Malik looked down at the drawing again. Then he looked back at Vivian. His voice was quiet but certain. "We start slow," he said. Vivian's lips trembled into the smallest, real smile Malik had ever seen. "Slow," she agreed. Malik hesitated, then reached across the table, not for a performance, not for an audience, just for her. His fingers brushed hers. Vivian's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. Her hand turned slightly, fitting into his like it belonged there, not because of a contract, but because of a choice. And in that simple touch, Malik felt something he hadn't felt since before the hospital, before the debt, before survival became his only language. Hope. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like pancakes in the morning, like a promise kept. Vivian's voice came out soft. "Malik," she said, as if saying his name without a title was a new kind of freedom. Malik's eyes warmed. Vivian. They sat there for a long time, hands touching, letting the world spin without them for once. And somewhere deep in Vivian's purse, the pocket watch sat closed, no longer counting down to a deadline, just marking time, time they could finally choose. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever had to survive for someone you love, or learn to trust again after loss, leave a message for Malik and Vivian in your heart. Sometimes the truest love doesn't start with grand gestures, but with one small choice to do the right thing and one brave choice to stay.